In this video, we look at Chapter 11, Trigo Identities and Equations, on the scale of how do we solve Trigo equations. So very simply, we look at some very simple steps on how to solve Trigo equations. Step number 1, when you are given a Trigo equation, make sure the equation is in terms of one Trigo function. It can be sine, cosine, tangent, cosecant, secant, etc. Okay, the whole equation, when you are given, it must be in terms of one Trigo function. Then you try to make the Trigo function the subject. Then after that, identify the quadrants. What do I mean by quadrants? I hope you still remember this diagram here. I always remember this by the short form, all science teachers are crazy. ASTC. A is in the first quadrant, S is the second quadrant, T is the third quadrant, C is the fourth quadrant. What do this quadrant mean? Okay, identify a quadrant meaning identify which quadrant does the angle lie in. You can identify that based after you have made your Trigo function a subject. So once you have made your Trigo function a subject, whether it's sine theta equals to some number, check the value of that number. If that number is positive or negative, and depending on the Trigo function, it will fall between either one of these four quadrants. In the first quadrant here, A stands for all the Trigo values here. Sine theta, cosine theta, tangent theta, all positive. Second quadrant, only sine theta is positive. The rest are negative values. Third quadrant, only tangent is positive. And the fourth quadrant, only cosine is positive. Okay, so this will help you identify which quadrant does your angle lie in. Once you have found the quadrant, next step is to find a reference angle by taking only the positive value and the inverse of the positive value, then you solve. Okay, so I'll illustrate this using a rather more difficult example. Let's look at this example here. Solve this equation here for x between 1 and 6. So if you see that this 1, 6, there's no degree symbol, meaning that this is a question in radian measure. Okay, so over here, if I look at this equation here, we follow the steps. I see a cosecant here and a cotangent here. Therefore, I must first make sure that they are of one Trigo function first. Cosecant square can actually turn into, based on what your Trigo identities, cosecant square can turn into 3 times, let me make this bigger, 3 times, cosecant square is actually 1 plus cotangent square, x, minus 4 plus 2 cotangent x equals to 0. Okay, then from here just expand and simplify. I'll get 3 plus 3 cotangent square x minus 4 plus 2 cotangent x equals to 0. Simplify everything. I'll get 3 cotangent square x plus 2 cotangent x minus 1 equals to 0. Now you say I have a quadratic equation in terms of cotangent x. So therefore, it is the same as what you do when you encounter quadratic equations in algebra. We first factorize it. So this can be factorized to become, okay, if you use, you can simply use your multiplication frame or your tic-tac-toe method or the cross method. You should get cotangent x plus 1 and 3 cotangent x minus 1. Okay, then from here, by your zero product rule, this means that cotangent x plus 1 is equal to 0, or 3 cotangent x minus 1 is equal to 0. Then from here, you can solve these two different equations. So remember, the steps is to make them of the same Trigo function, then make the Trigo function the subject. Subject meaning the coefficient must be 1. So over here, cotangent x is equal to negative 1. So we always try to turn it back to the 3 base Trigo functions, which is sine, cosine, and tangent. Cotangent is the inverse of tangent. So this is 1 over tangent. X is equal to negative 1, which means that tangent x is simply equals to negative 1. Okay, and on the other side here, 3 cotangent x is equals to 1. Therefore, cotangent x is equal to 1 over 3. So since tangent x is the inverse, over here this means that tangent x is equal to 3. Okay, then from here, now I've done step number 1 now. Step 2, identify quadrant. So meaning from here, I have tangent x equals to negative 1. I have to identify which quadrant does it lie in. Tangent, negative value. We look at the 4 quadrants over here. Tangent is t here, negative value. So over here, only your first and third quadrant tangent is positive. In this case here now, tangent is a negative value, which means that it will lie either in the second quadrant or your fourth quadrant. Okay, take note that these are the possible cases where your tangent is negative. So therefore, this means that tangent can lie in the second or fourth quadrant. So I will write this down so that I'm very clear. Which quadrant does the angle lie in? Similarly, for tangent x equals to 3, this is a positive value here, 3. So I look at the quadrant again. Tangent positive, it is in the first quadrant and third quadrant. Okay, so therefore this means that for this other equation here, this is your first and your third quadrant. Okay, so over here, now next step is to find my reference angle. I can use alpha to represent my reference angle. Reference angle, I usually use alpha, equals to tangent inverse. Remember, when you want to find reference angle, I'm only taking the positive of this value here. So even though here is negative 1, I'll only consider 1. Okay, then you press this in your calculator in radian mode. Remember, this question is in radian measure. If you do not change your mode, you will get different answers and you'll be wrong. Okay, so tangent inverse 1 in radian measure, you should get 0.78540. Okay, and therefore, final answer, solve. Find reference angle already. Second and fourth quadrant. Remember, second quadrant, for your angle to lie in second quadrant here, I found my reference angle. This is your alpha. So therefore, this angle here, x, is 180 degrees minus away reference angle in your second quadrant. So in this case here, in radian measure, second quadrant it is pi minus away 0.78540. And now in your fourth quadrant, remember again, fourth quadrant means your reference angle is this. Okay, so therefore I want to find this angle here, which is your x. So fourth quadrant, it will be 2 pi minus away alpha to get your x. So over here, this will be 2 pi minus away 0.78540. Okay, then from here I round off to 3SF. I should get two different answers, 2.36 and 5.50, all in radian mode. Okay, all in radian measure, 3SF. Okay, I'll do the same thing for the other side here. Find reference angle for tangent x equals to 3. Reference angle alpha is tangent inverse 3. Okay, press this in your calculator, you should get 1.2490. Okay, we usually write reference angle to 5SF. Maybe let me highlight this. 5SF. Why 5SF? This is an intermediate answer, not the final answer. So we do not round off to 3SF. If not, your answer here will be inaccurate. Okay, so we keep 5SF so that we can use it in the next few parts, so your final answer will be accurate. Okay, so over here, last part here, for the second part, first and third quadrant. First quadrant, reference angle is the same as x. Over here, reference angle is the same as x. So over here, very simply, first quadrant, your angle is simply just 1.2490. And the third quadrant, your reference angle is always with respect to your x-axis. This is your reference angle. So your x is this angle here, which is 180 degrees plus your reference angle. So in this case, it will be pi plus 1.2490. Okay, then press in your calculator, you should get two answers. Your two answers should be 1.25 and radian and 4.39 radian measure, all round off to 3SF. Okay, so therefore make a final answer statement. You see that there are 4 possible x answers. So therefore final answer is simply, therefore x can be, we write from smallest to biggest, 1.25, 2.36, maybe I write the radian measure here so that we are clear that this is in radian, 2.36 radian, 4.39 radian, and the last one is 5.50 radian. Alright, and we have solved this question from here. Okay, so I hope that you have kind of gone through with me how do we solve any type of Trigo equation. We always make sure that we make sure this Trigo function, the equation is in terms of one Trigo function. Try to make your Trigo function the subject. Subject means that the coefficient here is 1. Then you get a number over here. Once you get this number here, okay, whether it's sine, cosine, or tangent, we identify the quadrant. Once identify quadrant, find a reference angle. This value here is always the positive value. Even here, though here may be negative, this is just the positive value. Then your last step is solve based on your quadrant that you have identified. Okay, and that will be the end for this video.